Hey folks, I am not repeating what is said in the first 3 episodes on the Neolithic cycladic culture. I can only encourage all new people here to go and watch those in order to get a better idea of why I am talking about the cycladic frying pan so much. This time I want to talk about something that I haven't mentioned before, that is the longboats depicted on some of the pans. And more specifically, the fish symbol some of the boats are adorned with. Especially the Keros Zero sculpture ceramics show the boats, and historians recognize this 3rd millennium late Neolithic episode as an international episode, with people who traded with mainland Greece, Crete, Egypt, and Asia Minor. And while a lot is being discussed about how far their trade expanded and what role these boats played, I want to focus on the fish emblem. Historians discuss whether the fish is attached at the rear or the front end, and I happily leave that to the specialists. Instead, I want to grab the opportunity to talk about some subjects that I have looked into a while back already, which these fish have reminded me of. And although I was not new to the subject, I never expected to be putting so much time in it. All the additional info had me go into overload modus, so I chopped up the episode into segments to make it better digestible for everyone. First, the most obvious thought about these fish is that they represent figureheads. This would be a model that can be found among other faraway cultures. I found 2 examples, one in the Moluccas west of Papua and on the Solomon Islands east of West Guinea. But I am certain there are more examples to be found among indigenous fishing communities from around the globe. Figureheads often represent a deity, and the fish deity isn't too far-fetched for a folk dwelling on islands or coastlines. Egyptians favored ram's heads and birds. Phoenicians often used horses' heads. Romans and Vikings used snakes and dragons, and the Greeks often had boars. The ornaments were meant to invoke protection of a deity, or they resembled ferocious beasts to impress the enemy, etc. In this case, they may very well be nothing but goldfish and fishing nets, or like some propose, they represent aquatic animals, mammals like dolphins or the different kinds of whales that visit this part of the waters on a regular basis. Were these people whalers, perhaps? Was there a connection to cyclical movements of Venus, for example, or the other planets? Maybe this all relates to the precise time by when the aquatic mammals or fish in general were migrating. I really don't know. A friend reminded me of the habit of Maltesian fishermen to paint a pair of eyes on the sides of the bow of their boats, and these are called lutzo, I think. The trireme galleys used in the late Bronze Age by the Phoenicians, Greek city nations, and Romans are well known for the oculi on the hull. I found a good paper on the ophthalmoi, as these eyes are called in ancient Greek. Links in the description for those who want to read a bit. This ancient tradition seems to stem from the notion that boats were living entities who needed eyes to be able to find their way. The curious thing about them is that they can be found from the northwest of Europe all the way to China and Southeast Asia, and in between. Yet there is another possible explanation for the fish. It could be that these dugout longboats without sail had wind vanes at the bow or the rear end. This would allow them to read the winds properly, making it possible to proceed more swiftly by taking advantage when possible. I read there are wind vanes nowadays that are mechanically connected to the rear, allowing to sail on an on automatic pilot, so to say. A discovery or a rediscovery. On a side notice, the knowledge of the winds must have been of vital importance for navigation. Also, this could stand in relation to the synodic periods of planets. Venus, in particular, was regarded as malefic when angered, because her appearance would announce possible changing weather conditions, which could result in hardships. Speculative, but not too far fetched, I think. I mentioned earlier that the islands provide a rich source of minerals. I also mentioned the marbles of which their statuettes are manufactured and which were found as grave goods even on the Greek mainland. These were carved with obsidian chisels. Obsidian of the Cyclades was recovered from one of the 5th millennium BC necropoli of Varna at the Bulgarian Black Sea coastline. Other minerals they exported were Naxos stone and emery. Both deliver a high quality abrasive and were well known for their specific qualities. I must say it is a pleasure almost to read how these ancient writers discuss the difference in quality abrasives and how they compare Ethiopian sand with Indian sand, etc. They certainly didn't kill it with the usual sally, can't be done, can't be done. Back then they did not just move gems back and forth, but also raw ore from large slabs to stone dust. Emery is to this day valued for the production of sandpaper. There is a paper written in 1978 by a Frenchman called Jean Faucounot, a paper that sadly I cannot trace in its entirety, but it mentions the use of cycladic frying pans for navigation. Faucounot is one of those few historians who very early on drew a connection between the Paleolithic Danubian cultures, like the Vinca culture I mentioned in part 2 and 3 of this Swastika series, and the later Mediterranean cultures. By focusing on the Indo-European language dispersal, his conclusions are very similar to those of historian Marija Gimbutas, of whom the value of her work has only recently been recognized. Faucounot may be better known for his work on the Phaistos disc. I saw other mentions of this paper by researchers, but it seems they do not take it seriously enough to give even a short resume of his proposals. We know the astronomical value of the lids, but still no decent explanation for the pans themselves, apart from the salt production hypothesis. And I personally am not at all convinced that these pans were used for salt production. The graves that contained so-called frying pans appeared to be exceptionally rich in grave goods, causing researchers to propose this indicates the existence of an advanced seafaring elite. If that was the case, how far did this trade and exploration go exactly? I found mention of these people exporting not only their stones but their skills as well, meaning it all sounds like we cannot exclude that these late Neolithic cycladic cultures had the means to extend their contacts substantially. I will cut off here. I originally had a much longer piece in the making, but as I kept on reading, I soon realized it would all be too much for one episode. So I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.